What's up, Roto Grinders? Welcome to another edition of PGA After Dark. It seems like these things come hot and heavy when they start. Two majors here in just a handful of weeks. We got the season's final true major this year with the PGA Championship. It'll be at Valhalla Golf Club in Louisville this week. So with that, I'm pulling the double duty on Grinders Live today. Just got done with the baseball show about an hour and a half ago with Draft Cheat. And back here to talk some golf. Always love talking PGA with you guys, and especially having the co-host with me here today, Gibb. How's it going today?
Good, mate. Good. It's good to be back.
Well, welcome back. And a couple weeks ago, Dan filled in admirably for you in your absence. Got himself super prepared for the Open Championship, and we had a really nice golf show that week. So he manned the roost just fine while you were away. How was your trip?
I was good, mate. It was good. Very long overdue trip back home, and I thank you for Dan for stepping in for me.
Well, yeah, it was good to hear that you had a good trip, and again, getting away sometimes is always good to get a little refresher, and a lot of things happened while you were gone. Draft Street no longer with us, as they're part of DraftKings now, and I know we were just talking before the show, and you can tell that DraftKings is incorporating some of the elements of the Draft Street pricing, especially for the majors. The pricing this week, it's a little light. It's pretty easy to fit a bunch of good golfers on your team.
Yes, it is. Very easy. In fact, there was a comfortable team that I got Rory, Scott, and Rose onto, but whether or not I throw that team in is yet to be seen, but still, it was pretty easy.
Yeah, so you'll feel comfortable with your rosters when you build them. The unfortunate part is so will everybody else. So, but it's interesting. You can go a number of different ways. You can go with a bunch of middle-of-the-pack guys, or you can go with some of those top-end guys and still, take a flyer on the cheaper golfers, because there are some guys, contrary to normal, there are some guys at the lower end of the salary range that actually are pretty good golfers. I mean, you got some guys in even the 4K, 5K range that are worth talking about this week. So I will admit I don't know a ton about this course. I know it hosted the Ryder Cup back in 2008, and they haven't made a lot of changes since then. But the PGA Championship is one of those majors that's always contested on a different course. So Valhalla, I know that it hosted the Ryder Cup in 2008. Don't know a ton about it other than that, and that it's a Jack Nicklaus course, and that it will require golfers to hit the ball both ways. So it seems like the short game is going to be pivotal this week. Fairly wide fairways here, but why don't you fill us in a little bit about the course?
Well, it was renovated. It was a little bit of a touch-up after the Ryder Cup in preparation for this championship. They resurfaced all the greens, they rid all the bunkers, cleaned them out a bit, and there was, a couple of holes they did some changes, but nothing too dramatic. Still, it was a long time ago. It was 14 years since they played here, so the past players, sure, Phil, top 10 in the both times that they've played here before, so he's pretty much has the best history out of all of the golfers, except for Tiger, of course, but whether or not he plays or not remains to be seen as well. So I think it looks pretty cool. I looked at all the flyovers of all the holes, and it really looks like, one half of it is sort of a links-style looking course, and then the other half just looks like a typical US major. So it does seem like an interesting course, and it'll be a good course to watch.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where the scoring shakes out too, because obviously they won't be set up. They don't set up the PGA Championship as tough as a tournament like the U.S. Open. So a lot of times you'll see some decent scoring. And one of the interesting things that I came across yesterday when I was just getting into my research a little bit. The last 10 winners of the PGA Championship all finished in the top 25 in their previous start, and for most of them that's at Firestone. So form coming in is an important factor, and transitioning right into that, really not too many golfers in the world hotter than Rory McIlroy and Sergio Garcia right now.
Yeah, the bridesmaid and and Rory.
Does that concern you with Sergio at all? Does the slip up on Sunday at Firestone concern you? You know, it didn't concern me as much at the Open Championship because he was coming from way behind and he actually played really well on Sunday. But this time the opposite. You know, Sergio had the lead going into Sunday and Rory kind of surged past him there. So does that concern you with Garcia, given sometimes his little slips up mentally? Does that concern you with him this week?
It's not like he did that bad on Sunday. I mean, what is it? Bridgestone's pass. So he shot one over. That's not that bad. It's just Rory took it. He just, so he just wanted it more than Sergio. It's got to be gutting him that, he's come runner-up to Rory 2 tournaments in a row. So I think I read somewhere actually that he doesn't like this course and that it doesn't suit him. I was hoping.
Is this Rory or Sergio?
Sergio. So, but I mean, we heard about that Rory saying that about Hoy Lake before the British, and we know what happened there. So, I don't know. I'm gonna have to go back and see if I can find some definitive proof on that. It was just a bit of a scouring through. I was reading many articles, and I swear I read somewhere that Sergio has already stated that Valhalla doesn't set up well for him, but don't 100% quote me on that, but that's just what I think I remember reading.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see, some guys you can take a lot from those comments. I mean, I think Bubba Watson said that a couple times in the past couple of months about not caring, for courses that majors were contested on. I believe he had a couple of miscuts there. So
yeah,
but
it doesn't sound like Bubba's really interested in this one either.
Yeah, well, Bubba's just not happy right now. I know he went off a couple weeks ago about negative media attention and all that, but with Sergio, certainly there's no denying 3 straight second-place finishes. I know sometimes that's hard to stomach, but he's playing really good golf right now. But definitely McIlroy on top of his game, and when he's on top and playing well, he's capable of dominating the sport like Tiger did, 7 or 8 years ago. And clearly, right now Rory's on his game. And at 11.6, so he's $900 more than the next highest golfer. Do you think that that's about right, or do you think that Rory should be priced even higher than he is?
I think it's okay. I mean, yeah, sure, he's hot, but honestly, is he any hotter than Tiger was last year coming into the same event? And Tiger didn't. I think Tiger came 40th or something like that at the PGA last year. So, I mean, sometimes in golf we like to overblow things. I mean, sure, he's on a great streak right now, and he's got his game is firing on all cylinders. But you look at next person up is Adam Scott, and I'm looking at his results here, and he's had a top 10 these last 5 events. So, he's right there as well. He's gotten the one win, which was the Crown Plaza, but it's not like he's been slouching at all, and he is a major winner as well. He hasn't won 3 like Rory has, but I guess he's right where he should be.
Yeah, it's the pricing itself this week. Some of you might be following the DraftKings pricing for the first time. If you just come over from Draft Street, this isn't typical of DraftKings pricing for golf. They do lighten it up a little bit for the majors, but it is a lot easier to put together a team this week. So everyone comparatively is probably a little bit lighter than they would have been, say, if this was 4 or 5 weeks ago. So it's all kind of relative in there, but I think with the way that he's playing, I think you'll see a lot of people on McIlroy this week. Mm-hmm. I think you'll see a lot of people on Garcia. But what about those other guys at the top? And they're all guys that are playing pretty well. He hasn't broke through with a win recently, but Adam Scott, 5 straight top 10s, a win at the Crown Plaza, 4th at the Memorial, 9th at the U.S. Open, 5th at the Open Championship, 8th last week at Firestone. Didn't have his best round on Sunday either, but he was in contention all week. Justin Rose was 4th last week and also won just a month or so ago at the Quicken Loans tournament.
And then
And
again,
Phil
Scott.
Mickelson, I mean, let's throw him in there too. He's been up and down, but shot 8 under on Sunday, and said he's feeling really good about his game coming into this tournament. Obviously, he'll be amped up for a major in the U.S., so a lot of guys with some potential up there.
Yeah, I think because of the pricing, I think the top three people owned for the top level will be Rory, will be Sergio, and will be Fowler. I think the media is pumping Fowler up so much, and that he's top 10 in all the majors this year. So I think they'll be pumping him up as well. I think he'll be, since he's not hasn't broke the 10K barrier there. I think a lot of people will be on Fowler as well. I think Scott and Rose are just ripe for the plucking in GPPs. I have a feeling people are not going to be on them as much.
Yeah, I would agree. It's always interesting to see who people gravitate towards in some of these tournaments. And with the pricing this week, I think there's a lot of people in play. What do you make of Ricky Fowler? I mean, he's never been the most consistent golfer, but certainly playing perhaps the most consistent golf of his career right now.
Definitely the
The
most.
way he's been running. So, are you comfortable with him this week, or are you mainly off of him because you think a lot of other people will be on him? Or, I mean,
Um,
I've never seemed to find myself comfortable taking him.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've never been a massive Ricky fan. I think the last time I picked him, he was shot like six over, and on the first day, and I was, he did that the year before, and I was thinking, well, he can come back and do it like he did last year, and he never did, and it sort of burnt me. But um, I'm looking more his way. I might do it for a cash game because it's a less risk, I think, because he's been playing lights out. So yeah, I think there's some merit there to picking him.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with him, the last 4 tournaments, we're talking about him playing hot golf right now, 8th, 2nd, and 13th. But before that, 2 cuts, a 77th, a 38th, and another cut. So
Hmm.
Ricky goes up and Ricky goes down. And at the Crown Plaza, he was 15 over par and got cuts. So
Yeah.
up and down golf, I mean, it's always a wild card with him, but certainly has the talent to win this tournament. And I wouldn't also be surprised, if he didn't make the weekend. But
Yeah.
that's the nature of golf. You can't predict everything, with a fine-tooth comb. And certainly he's playing well right now. But the way Mickelson played on Sunday, and as consistent as he is, I know he hasn't broken through that much this season either. Really, going back his last 10 starts, he does not have a top 10. He's been close a few times. But do we put some stock into that 8 under round he shot on Sunday? He was magnificent in that final round of
There's something
Firestone.
to it. I mean, I was surprised his price was as high as
Yeah.
it is. Both him and Tiger. I figured they would dip into the 8,000s, or at least where the 8,000 players are now would be. But I guess that's just all namesake. But yeah, I think there is some validity to it. Like I said, he's top 10 in the last two times he's played at this course. Granted, he's probably not the same physically as he was back then, but everyone wrote him off for the British too last year, and look what happened there. Granted, he was coming in with a first place at the Scottish the week before, but still, threw his hands up and says, "Hey, I'm not a links player," then goes out and wins the British. So, it's. I mean, I wouldn't be looking for Phil to win, but I think he can put up a solid number.
Yeah, and I think, as a pick for a cash game or something, I feel comfortable with him making the cut. And, but I'm with you. I think the price is a bit higher than I expected, but maybe they factored in the popularity factor with Phil Mickelson.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, but interesting to see, some American guys creeping up there. Certainly Tiger, you don't want to touch him right now with the back injury. But a guy that's been flying under the radar for the most part, really went through a slump there in June. How about Matt Kuchar, another consistent golfer, 12th last week, 4th at the Canadian Open the week before. down to 9,400 on his price, and I think a lot of people will be sleeping on him this week.
Yeah, I was thinking that a couple hours ago. I was thinking if there was a first-time winner, who would I put money on as a first-time winner for this event, a first-time major winner? And I was thinking Matt Kuchar. If I had to put money on a player winning it for the first time this weekend coming up, it would probably be Matt Kuchar. Granted, he has to get past the people who have won a major before, but I sort of think he is up there with Adam Scott and Justin Rose as people who are going to be overlooked.
Yeah, and for those of you who are watching us live, I'll just recap real quick. My error, I did not load the video correctly to the site, so it was recording, and if you watch, you can go back and play this back. I mean, obviously, we've got 48 hours here until the tournament starts, and most of you watch this on playback anyway, so you won't even know that anything's wrong, but if any of you are watching live, I did not load the video right, so you missed the first few minutes, but go back and watch that after the show. Again, this will all be available. We've just been talking about the top golfers, obviously Rory McIlroy on a tear coming into this tournament, and then the media in the U.S. really hyping up guys like Ricky Fowler this weekend. We're a little bit cooler on him than some of the other top names. But, guys like Adam Scott, Justin Rose, Sergio Garcia, all playing well coming into this tournament. And the last 10 winners of the PGA Championship have all been coming off top 25s in their tournament just prior to this. So that's mainly where we've gotten through the top golfers on the list. Just finished talking a little bit about Matt Kuchar, and I'm a big fan of his for his consistency. So below that tier, we kind of go from the 8K to 9K range. You've got golfers with a lot of upside, but more inconsistent guys. There's a Keegan Bradley who's always a good wild card in there. There's Bubba Watson, who we just talked about, missing a couple cuts at big tournaments because he didn't really like the course. Jordan Spieth started out the year on fire. He's been a little down of late. And then you've got guys like Brandt Snedeker, Charles Schwartzel, who are always somewhat hit or miss, at least as far as the top tier goes. The guy that sticks out to me in that mid 8K range is Graham McDowell, playing really good golf right now. He was 8th last week at Bridgestone, 9th at the Canadian Open, and 9th at the Open Championship at only 8,500. He's the steadiest player kind of in that group of mid to high-end golfers. So McDowell's the guy I'm definitely looking at this week. Who are you looking at in that kind of price range?
Probably McDowell and Keegan. Phil had a press conference today, and he's talking about how sharp Keegan looked out there. And the last time I remember Phil was talking about someone who looked sharp out there, he was talking about Ricky Fowler before the Masters, and he went out and posted, I think, a top 5 there. So, Phil might be a good barometer of how players are playing. He's coming off a 4th as well. I was going to get on him for the British, and I never did. So, he came 19th there, and I think it was a 4th the event before that. So, he's had a couple of top 5s mixed in with the 19th of the British. So Keimer might be a sneaky one as well. I hate to keep going back to Keimer, but he did have a shoulder issue for the British Open, and he said that's all fine now. So if it's really, it's meant to have some rain and some thunderstorms, but if there isn't and there's roll on, Keimer, the course will really suit Keimer as well. So need to check the weather for that. I have a feeling it's going to be pretty hot and humid, or just downpour or thunderstorm. So that might not work out best for him. I was listening to the Golf Channel, and they're all over Jimmy Walker. I guess I dropped below $8,000 there, but yeah.
He's right there, yeah.
The little box I have right there, I see Jimmy Walker. He hits it long and high, and Phil was talking about how in a course like this, you need to hit it long and high, and the higher you hit it, the better chance you can get it stop on the greens. And Jimmy Walker's pretty good at doing that.
Yeah, like him, he's another guy who really hot at the beginning of the year. He's kind of cooled of late, but he's still making cuts, still posting top 30 finishes, and that's what you need in a if your guy makes the cut. This is a different tournament than last week. Say if last week was your first time playing fantasy golf. At Firestone, there was no cut. There was only 76 golfers last week. So there will be a cut this week. You're looking to get as many guys through as you can. And taking those golfers, there are tons of guys in this range that I like this week. You mentioned Walker. Hideki Matsuyama is another one. I know we're both kind of high on him in general. He's playing good golf right now. I was impressed with the way he played this weekend. He really struggled on Thursday. Got off to a poor start. I believe he was, 3 over par through his front 9 holes. Ended up bouncing back for an even par first round, and then shot 65-68 on the weekend, finished in 12th place. He's a guy that can really put some birdies together, and at 7,700, I think that's a nice price tag on him this week too.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I saw it and was like, yeah, click him. Yep, he's definitely on my team.
And a guy that maybe, the non-hardcore people that maybe only follow the major tournaments, people might not know about him, so he might go a little bit less owned than, say, a guy that's right there in that same price range like Zach Johnson. A lot of people are going to look to him.
Yeah.
Not a huge fan of the way he's playing at the moment since his second. He did get second at the John Deere Classic, which is one of his favorite tournaments because he's a local, but outside of that, 28th, 73rd, 53rd, 40th, a cut, 47th to 23rd, really not knocking on any doors. So yeah. I'm not a big fan of Zach Johnson this week.
No, I'm not. But yeah, Hideki though, in approach shots from 200 yards and further, he's I think in the top 5 in proximity to the hole. And this is a course where you're going to have a lot of long irons into the greens, so you're going to look at those really long distances approach shots. So he might be that's just another little tick next to Hideki that I like. I think there's a lot I can say about Hideki. I think he's a dark horse to maybe even win it all.
Yeah, that's I've got a lot. I will have a lot of exposure to Hideki Matsuyama this week myself. So good to see that you're in the same boat with him, especially at that price, 7,700. Not a lot of downside to a golfer of his quality at that price. So who else are you liking in that range? Say the 7K range. I mean, I see some more names that people might be on this week too.
I like Ryan Moore. I was going up against him a lot last week, and I didn't have him, and he just seems to be the goods at the moment. I think it's like 3 top 10s in the last 4 events. So,
fifth, seventh, and the only non-top 10 was a 12th at the Open Championship, and then an 8th last week. So, he's kind of come out of nowhere this year. I mean, not a household name before this season.
And with Dustin Johnson taking a bit of a breather, and Tiger probably potentially out for the Ryder Cup, captain's choice, Ryan Moore might be a dark horse to make it in there. So a nice showing at this event could pretty much maybe lock up a spot for him on the Ryder Cup as well.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see that at all. 7 top 10s for Ryan Moore in 20 starts this season. He was very highly owned last week. Some of the 10-man double-up tournaments, he was 70-80% owned. So people will not be sleeping on Ryan Moore. So at 7,400, I think it might be an interesting, decision to not go with him in a tournament because he will be pretty highly owned. But for your cash games, you'll definitely want to have some exposure and just choose wisely as to whether or not you're going to take him, knowing that he will probably be one of the more highly owned guys of the week. And one of the guys that I was a little disappointed in last week because he seems like he's always so consistent, and I would have never expected to see 4 rounds put together like this from Steve Stricker. It just really surprised me. I just kind of waited for him to get it going. 12 over par last week, and again, I mentioned the last 10 winners of this tournament have all got top 25 finishes in the tournament coming in. So is that just a 1-week aberration from Steve Stricker? I mean, I know he's kind of on a part-time schedule now, but he's usually not the guy that you would expect to have 4 unsteady rounds like he had last week.
Yeah, I was all over him last week.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, everyone else was, or else it would have been even worse for me last week than it already was. Yeah, I was shocked. I don't know what's happening there. He didn't want to go to the British Open, and if there's something that this last week has told me is we know absolutely nothing about these guys at all. I mean, with the Dustin Johnson thing,
Yeah.
taking a leave of absence, and then you find out he's suspended, then you find out he's already been suspended 3 times prior to that. The PGA doesn't really disclose anything, and it's very lips are sealed. So who knows what's going on with Stricker? And when you see something out of the ordinary like that, I'm starting to think, well, maybe there's something up now because there is no information out there at all, but we don't know anything about what's going on. So I mean, I know his brother's sick or was sick earlier in the year. Maybe something like that cropped up. He didn't want to go to the British. Who knows? I'm not on him at all.
Yeah, it certainly worries me. I mean, it's so tempting at 7,100 to take him. I might throw him on a tournament team or two, but just the factors that you laid out there, you never know when there's something going on, and he clearly does not have a problem skipping majors as he did at the Open Championship. I believe the last 2 years he hasn't played in that. So the 7,100 price tag is enticing. I'll probably have him on a couple tournament teams, but I certainly won't have huge exposure to Steve Stricker this week. Anybody else in that range that you like? I mean, there's guys that are quality golfers in that range. Guys like Angel Cabrera, Luke Donald, Webb Simpson, Jason Duffner, Hunter Mahan. They all kind of have in common that they're not playing their best golf right now, but they're capable of a high finish in a tournament like this. So what do we make of kind of that gaggle of guys right there between 6,900, say, and 7,300?
Luke Donald just doesn't seem in sync at all.
Yeah.
Jason Duffner, I found out that he's been injured since the Masters. He has some bulging discs in his neck or something like that. He's been taking shots since the Masters. I would have liked
and that shows in his results right now. He has not been playing.
I would have liked to known that before the event last week. So there's just, I mean, Webb Simpson maybe. There's talk that Tom Watson's really looking into him as maybe a captain's pick. I don't necessarily see it. He hasn't really done much all season except for the win earlier in the season at the Shriners last year, but the wraparound season. So technically he has a win this year, but nonetheless, it was a long time ago. So I mean, there's Patrick Reed shot onto the radar a little bit more with his World Golf Club, the Bridgestone event last week, but Cabrera I could never get right. He, when I pick him, he misses the cut. When I don't, he, top 10. So,
that's pretty much all he does. It's either horrible or a top 10. He's pretty all or nothing.
go big or go home kind
That's
of thing.
Right.
So, just a bit under 69 at 68, Gary Woodland. I mean, I'm always an advocate about Gary Woodland. I seem to feel like I write about him a lot. Big hitter. His short game's come along this year, so he's 18 of 20 making the cut, 4 top 10s. Played really well last week. I was surprised at one point. I looked down and he was 60th or something like that in the first round, and then by the end of it he finishes 12th, I think it was. So or 25th, one of the two. So he at that price range, Woodland would be one that I like, and Hunter Mahan burnt me, and then he came back and did fairly well last week. But between Woodland and Moore, those would be the top two in that sort of price range.
Yeah, Moore for sure, definitely going to be a popular pick. It's interesting to see easily choosable golfers down even below this, because it felt like, for the Masters and such, we were kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel for guys. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, look at Brendan Todd down there at 6,600, the way he's playing. I know he didn't have the best week last week either, but there's quality golfers down there. I mean, Bill Haas, 20 for 22 in cuts. He's 6,600. Those are two guys that I think will be relatively popular this week. One word of note on Graham DeLette. He withdrew last week with a bad case of the flu, and sometimes those symptoms can stick with you for a while. So if you were thinking about using him, I would monitor his health status going into the tournament. I think I'd be a little gun-shy, even though the price tag is nice at 6,500. I just don't feel comfortable rostering him. He wasn't playing that great. He had a 6-over par round on Saturday last week, and then got really sick. So
Yeah.
Todd and Haas, I think, are two guys at 6,600 that I'll look at a little bit. It's just weird to see so many good golfers down here.
I mean, I think DraftKings don't like Italians that much because Francesco Molinari again is.
Did you see what his price was at the Open?
Yes, I did, and I thought I'd do the fade, and since everyone was going Molinari, I thought I'd go De Jong. Yeah, and that blew up in my face. So.
Yeah, Molinari he struggled on Saturday, but I think he was in third place after the second round and still finished top 15. So.
Another little snippet though is the person right underneath Delat, and this would be a good tournament play. Would be Jeff Ogilvy. He coming off a long overdue win at the Barracuda last week, and I was doing a little bit of research to see how people from the Barracuda or the Reno event the week before the PGA Championships. I think it's the last 4 winners of that event have gone on to make the cut at the PGA Championship. When I first logged on, he was the first person who I went down to have a look at when the prices came out, and I saw him at 63. I was like, sweet, perfect price. That's going to be my sleeper pick. And then I scrolled all the way down, and I saw the 3,000s, and then who was down 4,000 or 5,000. I was like, okay, now the scoring has changed a lot, so or the pricing's changed a lot. So, yeah, Jeff Ogilvy might be an interesting play. He's down in his confidence, and he's picked up a win, and who knows how, he's a former major winner, so all he needed was maybe a win to get that confidence up and running.
Yeah, I think that's great analysis. I mean, certainly, a lot of people might not have even known there was another PGA Tour event going on last week since the tournament at Firestone was a small field. Only 76 golfers there. There was actually a concurrent tournament that the lesser known names played in, and allowed them to stay sharp too ahead of this major. So yeah, I think that's hot golf is hot golf no matter where you're playing. I mean, I can go out to the local course here, and if I shot my best round ever by 10 shots, certainly I'd be feeling a lot more confident the next time I went out there. I know that's a simplified example, but there's nothing that you could say that's negative about a guy coming off a win. It can't hurt you in any way, shape, or form. So,
if anything, it jacked his price up.
Yeah, and 6,300, still not too bad. A guy that I know we've talked about in past shows, and he was actually really steady last week. Got a nice bonus on DraftKings for having all 4 rounds under 70. He finished in 15th place. That's Thomas Bjorn, another guy that not a lot of people know a lot about, but 6,300 price tag on him seems pretty friendly too.
Yeah, I'll try and find the. I think he was one that I marked out for past course history as well. Let me see. Yeah, he came 3rd the last time it was played here too. So,
perfect.
His price is good. I mean, you can't go wrong with that price there. I haven't seen what he did. What did he come last week?
15th. He was under par every round, but never really made a huge move. But I think he finished 5 or 6 under in 15th place.
And slow and steady is sometimes what you need on a team. I mean, the amount of times that I've cashed with Stuart Sink in my team is, and he doesn't blow your socks off, but you know what? He keeps the scoreboard ticking over, and that's all you need sometimes.
And sometimes you got 6 golfers on your team out of 156. So realistically, you're not going to peg, the 6 guys that all come in the top 10 or something like that. So if you get, say, 2 guys in the top 10, another 2 guys in the top 25, and you get at least 5 of your 6 guys through the cut, that's going to perform pretty well for you, at least in your cash games.
Yeah. You
might not get first in a GPP for it, but there's nothing wrong with taking a safe play if you don't want to take the risk of a guy who might be boom or bust like an Angel Cabrera, something like that. But especially when we get to these lower priced guys. Not all of them are sure things, and if you want to take a flyer on somebody that's really cheap, you're basically if they finish 15th, you'll be ecstatic. So
Yeah.
obviously this field is a loaded one, and it's got all the top golfers in the world, but I wouldn't be surprised to see one of these guys down here surprise and finish near the top. There's just so many guys down here. I know I've said that a lot during the show, but what do you make of a guy like I'm not on this week, but the name just popped into my head because he had a huge win 2 weeks ago, then really struggled last week. A guy that I've never been able to peg right, except I did have him a little bit at the Canadian Open. That's Tim Clark.
No, I don't think
I don't know. He is my kryptonite,
Yeah.
similar to Cabrera for you.
On draft day, I hadn't played draft day in a long time, so I thought I'd put in a cheeky one last week, and that site was the only one I had Tim Clark on, and yeah, it did nothing. I was like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it was a rough weekend for him, kind of similar to what happened to Steve Stricker. I'm not on this week, but he is 2 weeks removed from his first win in a while.
Yeah.
And that's just a sampling of the guys. I mean, look at the guys at 5,800. You've got Chris Kirk, who's had a great season. John Senden has slipped up of late, but he was really good earlier in the year. This course would seem to suit him nicely. And you've got Charlie Hoffman at 5,600, who's made 19 cuts this year. Matteo Manacero had a couple good rounds at the Open Championship. I mean, all these guys that are in play at the under 6K price tags.
Even Charles Howell III. I mean, what, 21 of 24.
Yep.
So it's not like he's slouching either. Like I said, DraftKings doesn't like the Italians. Manacero has done pretty well in the last couple of tournaments. I mean, I think 3 tournaments ago he didn't do well, but his last 2 have been pretty good. But yeah, it's some of the talent down there is just I think there are some top 100 players under 4K, or at least under 5K.
Yeah, there's a few people that caught my eye. Matt Jones is down there. He's 4,500. Scott Brown has been playing pretty well. He's 4,600. He's made 19 cuts on the year. Kevin Streelman is down there. He got last place last week and is really not playing good golf right now, so I'm not on him. But these guys are all under 5K, and before, I think when we did the Masters show, it was like if you look at the under 5K guys, you're playing them at your own risk.
Yeah, I think that was what's his name? Ben Crenshaw, I think, was one of them.
Yeah, I was trying to think of who you hitched your wagon to.
I always pick up Ben Crenshaw on the Masters, and then if he ever watches this, I'm sorry.
If he does, I'm honored. I'll send him an apology card. That we gave him a little bit of a hard time, but there's guys under there. Who's your best bet, kind of out of all these guys we've recently been talking about? 6K or under range.
Oh, I mean, Boo Weekley was on the Ryder Cup team that won in 2008, so. He's at 5K. I liked David Hearn at 5K. And he's another one that I thought, I'm going to see how much, I was looking at some of the results, and I'm like, yeah, David Hearn, that might be a good sleeper. And so I went down and saw him 5K. I'm like, wow, that's even cheaper than Ogilvy. And then I went down further, and it's like, oh, man, there's even more value down there. So Hearn, Brendan Grace might be a very... I've been on him before, and he's burnt me, and he's also paid off for me. So he's a couple of years ago, he was my go-to guy when I needed a cheap guy, and he sometimes paid off, sometimes he didn't. But he was in the top 25 last week, and he played pretty well. I think he was very handy with the putter and greens and regulation as well. So that's another one that'd be a tournament play, because, quite frankly, I don't think anyone will be on him. You go down, I think a couple of people will be on JD, even though he doesn't really do well in the US majors. He's does better overseas than he does over here. If he didn't come off a withdrawal last week, I'd be saying David Toms at 4,600. He seems to play PGA championships pretty well, and he was top 10 last year, so... I mean, I can go down further. You can get all the way down to Tom Watson and say, you know what? I think he'll do better than Bubba Watson, really. So, his head's in the right place. But again, you get that's a very play-to-earn risk.
Yeah, and frankly, with the pricing, I mean, you don't need to go that low.
Hmm.
Unless you're trying to fit like 4 studs on a team. And for tournament games, sure, there can be some merit to doing that, but there's just so much quality talent, all throughout the pricing. If you get under 4K, that's when it starts to get a little bit dicey, but
Yeah,
certainly plenty of guys you can choose from.
you can get to the PGA pros at that level, the club pros.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can throw me on the list. I can miss a cut at 20. Put me on there for 2,900, and we'll see how I do. But
No worries.
it'll be interesting to see how this tournament plays out. It's supposed to be fairly decent weather-wise. I think I looked. The temperatures are supposed to be in the 80s. It's summer in Louisville, so there will be chances of storms. So you might see some wind gusts, if a storm happens to kick through. But I don't think you're going to see any Open Championship type weather here. Which, speaking of that, it was a classic. I know we weren't on for that week, but we've got a little bit of time here. So a classic Open Championship where, boy, were you hurt if you were on the wrong side of that draw.
Yeah, I didn't get to see much of it because it started right. The tee-off times were right when I had to go pick my nieces up from school, and then it didn't come on until dinner time. And then once dinner time was over, there's only one TV in the house, and so they didn't really want to watch golf. And it finished at 2 in the morning, and so yeah, the Australian time, British Open doesn't work that well. So, in fact,
Yeah, it wasn't that glorious here either. When it started at like 3 in the morning, so at least I got to catch a lot of it. When I woke up and during the morning hours. But it was the first day. It started off so calm, and then the wind picked up in the afternoon, and then there was a big storm that blew through overnight and into the next morning. So the guys that teed off late and then early were really on the wrong side of the draw. I mean, I think only one of those guys in that side of the draw finished in the top 12, and that was Adam Scott.
Yeah.
Crazy to think where he could have been if he was on the other side.
I heard about the wind because Bubba was complaining about it today, and that.
Imagine that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think doing daily fantasy golf in Australia wouldn't work at all because most of the time though. The tournaments don't start till 11 o'clock at night. So pretty much exactly what happens over here for the British happens in Australia for a regular PGA event. And in the mornings, I was battling 2 and 3-year-olds. It was either watching the end of an event or watching Dora. And I lost everything.
Oh, well, there you go. You just can't fight that, man. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't win over Dora.
So, yeah, I don't think I could do this if I lived back in Australia. And I was lost. I looked at tournaments and I was like, yeah, I haven't researched. And British Open, I was just stupid. I put too much money on something I hadn't researched at all. And so I'm glad I didn't do much analysis while I was in Australia because it all would have been bad.
Well, hey, we appreciate, these shows are fun to do, and I know, people that aren't as familiar with golf, there is a lot of good information to be gained by listening to us talk about it. So, obviously we've thrown out a good 40 or 50 names during the show, but there are so many ways you can go, with your team this week. If you had to pick one guy that, based on his price, is kind of the best value on the board, it can be anybody. It can be a cheap guy. It can be an expensive guy that seems a little bit too cheap. Who's that guy that seems like he's almost a must-play at that price, kind of like Molinari was at the Open Championship?
Oh.
Not to put you on the spot or anything. I'll give one, too.
I think Hideki.
Okay, yeah. I knew we both be on him. If I'll give a B and say, I kind of mentioned it when we went through him. I think Graham McDowell is a little bit too cheap for his price there. So I think those will definitely be 2 guys that I will have on a lot of my teams this week, given their prices: $7,700 on Matsuyama and $8,500 on Graham McDowell. I think pretty good. And an honorable mention to a guy like Ryan Moore, who is just playing great golf right now. He's at a nice price at 7,400 as well. So
Yeah.
I haven't looked yet, but did you write up an article this week, or do you have one in
I'm
the
in the
works?
middle of it right now. I figure I'd be better served to research for this show first than write
Yeah.
an article, but hopefully that'll be coming out in the morning tomorrow.
All right. Well, we still have tomorrow's only Wednesday, so still plenty of time to get your PGA lineups together. So check out Gibb's article in the morning, and possibly an article, I believe, from Notorious for his picks for the PGA Championship as well. So
If it
nice
doesn't
to see
come
the
out,
growth
though,
of golf.
if it doesn't come out during the morning, though, sometimes they like to feature it after the baseball starts. So look Wednesday night.
Yeah, very good. So anybody else that we missed? I think we pretty much went from top to bottom here, but anybody that we may not have given a mention to that deserves a look.
You can make an argument for anyone on this list at the prices, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels that way. It's very. You could put many teams together and feel like you're going to win $100,000 with this team that you're putting together. It just feels that way. And sadly, it's not. But yeah, I like the prices. It really gives the casual.
Yeah, I think that's what they're trying to do with that.
You know, I've heard about Rory. He's doing really good. Can I get Rory in a team? Oh yeah, I can. But I think it's a good point you say about Ryan Moore, though, is you should always try and remember who was the heavily owned people last week, and if they did good, the people who picked them last week
They'll be right back.
are still going to go right back to the same person who they were on last week. So, yeah, that's a very good point there.
Yeah, he will be a popular pick this week, as will the other guys that we highlighted during the show. So choose your teams wisely, and again, there's nothing wrong with making a contrarian pick if you're doing a tournament lineup or something, because it's golf. Anything can and will happen, and that's what makes it such an exciting sport to follow. And I've had some people tweet at me, boy, golf became a lot more interesting when you added fantasy sports to it. Well, some of us just enjoy it in general, but hey, if it takes daily fantasy sports to get you to watch it, if you're going to watch it if you're over at my house, that's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how much my wife likes the Golf Channel on, but it's on a lot.
Well, hey, she can't argue if it helps you make a nice side income from daily fantasy. It's just it's business. So my wife has come to accept some of that, but with two boys and her, I have some competition for the TV as well.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, last night she was on the tablet watching YouTube. The middle one was on YouTube on my laptop, and I'm on the other side of the room trying to look at watch the TV. And it's like everyone's turning the volume up, and so like, you know what? I'm just gonna take the high road and put it on mute and just watch it. And so yeah.
Luckily, you don't lose a ton with golf that way.
Yeah.
You still being able to watch it's better than nothing. But with that, we're almost to it. We're about 50 minutes here, and that's usually around where we get on some of these shows. So the pricing is just so much this week that you really don't have to delve too deep to make a team. It makes it really interesting for the casual user. So, Gibb, it's good to have you back. I'm glad you were able to come on tonight, and good luck in all your games this weekend.
Good luck to you too, and it's good to be back.
All right, good luck, everybody. Again, this show will be available on demand here on Roto Grinders, so you can catch the link anytime before the tournament starts. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit us up on Twitter. Is yours RG_Gibbathy or just
Yes, it is.
Underscore?
Yes, it's RG_Gibbathy. Hope Notorious doesn't mind that I sort of mimicked his little handle.
Oh, no, that's perfect. Propping up Roto Grinders, there's nothing wrong with that on your Twitter account, so I don't think he minds one bit. And my Twitter handle, just your basic STL Cardinals 84. I guess they have added those into our little profile things at the bottom here, so you can see those anytime. So feel free to hit us up if you have any questions. Good luck in all your games this weekend, and we'll see you next time, everyone. Have a good one.
See you guys.